Welcome to the Business Bravery podcast, inspiring stories from coaches and course creators to help you do the next brave thing in your business. Coming up on the Business Bravery podcast. Instead of, I didn't get to that because this family thing came up and then just couldn't get to it and I just have to get it done. And okay, it's not that you didn't get to it, it's just that you prioritized family because family is a big value for you. It's a core value. It's now, okay, I've prioritized family. Now let's look at, all right, what are my backup options for getting these things done? People are always saying, do the important stuff, the stuff that takes the energy in the morning. For me, doing writing and creative tasks and things, that's the afternoon hours are my best time. And in fact, like meetings and things like that sort of happen more in the mornings. They say write drunk, edit sober. But for me, it's like I'm writing from this sort of more tired creative place, and then I get to edit it the next morning. And when you don't know that about yourself, it's easy to tell yourself this story about you're lazy because you can't do it at the same time as everyone else. And if I was successful, then I was lucky despite being lazy. And if I failed, that was because of my laziness. Oh, well, I was lazy. And if I'd have just started earlier, and that was part of that cycle that I was in. I don't want to be the icky salesperson, but I still got to make sales. I got to be somebody better, somebody more confident. But actually, we're helping someone solve a problem. The best salespeople in the world are good listeners. They listen and they respond, and then they say, hey, here's a solution. I'm your host, Tiffany G, an Australian business and launch coach with 10 years experience in online marketing. I help coaches to be brave so they can break through a dry spell and sign their next clients. I'm also the creator of the Brave Launch Framework. I coach, consult, and provide marketing services. Today, I'm sharing my client's story. I refer to her as M to maintain her privacy, and I'm sharing her amazing progress over the 2 months we've been working together so far. She broke through the ultimate of dry spells, getting her first paying coaching clients. We worked on elements like work-life balance, feeling icky about sales, as well as going live so she can one day run a live group coaching program. She's been going from strength to strength and moving forward faster than she ever thought possible. I'm sharing her story, and to protect her privacy, I'm using examples from my own experiences with these issues to demonstrate the cycles we can get trapped in that keep us stuck and not moving bravely forward in our coaching businesses. Now, who's ready for some business bravery inspiration? Let's dive in. Hello everyone, I am here to talk to you about my client who I have named M because she prefers to remain anonymous, and that's totally okay. So before we worked together, M had been in the ultimate dry spell. She hadn't signed her first paying client yet, but she'd been active online for months. She'd been doing a lot of online courses over the last couple of years, getting ready, slowly moving into things. She had been reading a lot of books and doing business books and money mindset books and then just normal mindset books and that kind of stuff. And she'd been in the middle of creating her online course for months. We'd been connected for quite some time before she decided to invest in working with me, right? She didn't have any income and she was still dreaming of one day having clients. So she could have her dream group program and then that would lead into her online course. And I want to share her story so far because we've been working together for 2 months. We've been working through her consistency issues, work-life balance, how she was, without meaning to, stripping her own self-confidence, and how sales felt icky, and we worked through some of that, and her fears about going live and doing live training. Okay, now we're into this in a couple of months. She's posting consistently. She's telling people about her coaching offers without feeling icky, and she's landed her first paying coaching client, right? Do you remember that feeling of landing your first paying coaching client when you're like, oh, somebody's paying me and I get to work with them, right? So for me, my first paying client online was for photography work, and I did not charge a lot like we all do. We all sort of start off with this small amount of money, don't we? Yeah, I definitely didn't make a profit on that job at all. I was just testing it all out, and yeah, had to travel hours to get to this place to do this photography session, but it was so much fun. And yeah, it was really like, oh wow, hey, this business thing can work. Of course, I've pivoted a few times since then. I was talking about her, I've gone off on a tangent. I have my notes here in front of me, so if you're watching me on video and you can see me looking just below the camera, that's because I have these notes to try and keep me on track, and so I can get in all of the points that I want to make and have a little less of the ums, ahs, and so's so that I can I don't have as much to do on the editing side of things. But anyway, we got her first paying client, right? And now we're working on her live video skills and just taking the small steps to build up the confidence to be able to go live and do live training. Okay. This episode will be most useful for you if you're in a dry spell or an income dip, and just some ideas of what that actually is, or what that could be for you. And it's like, if you haven't signed a new client in months, okay, or even weeks, especially if that's unusual for you. Like if you were on some sort of launch schedule and that's totally normal and you're like, then you'll probably be looking at this episode maybe for other stories of bravery, or maybe connecting with your own clients and seeing how you can really get into the mindset of someone who is a couple of stages earlier than you, who you help. Right. But that dry spell, if you're in it, you haven't signed a new client in months or maybe weeks, especially if that's unusual for you, you've had a new sales call, you haven't had a new sales call booked in weeks, like a discovery call, a strategy call, whatever you want to call it. You haven't had any of those booked in weeks or months, especially if that is unusual for you. And if you're in between launches, then this might not apply to you, like I sort of said, but it's always good to sort of go over this stuff and keep your mindset strong and keep yourself in the skills of bravery, because this is what I help people do. Okay. So I help people to be brave so that they can bust through the dry spell or the income dip. Especially in those earlier stages of being a coach. Or if you're wanting to get into, my 6-month launch coaching program, then that's also on offer for those of you who are at that stage as well. Even if you're just struggling with consistency or work-life balance, or maybe just working all the time but don't seem to be actually getting traction or momentum in your business and actually creating new income, but you're doing the 14-hour days, this episode will be useful for you. Okay. I'm going to be talking about going through the steps that we went through in coaching. I will be sharing the before and the after. And then in terms of just examples, I'm going to be talking about examples from my own experiences, again, to protect my clients' privacy and anonymity. But the reason I can help my client through this is because I have been going through this. I've had to conquer these stages and these steps when it comes to building my own business. So that is what I'll be sharing, my own stories. And they definitely line up with my client, but they're not the exact things that which she went through. Okay, so the idea of this episode is you will be inspired by my client's M's bravery, okay, to do the next brave thing in your business. And if you want support with that brave thing, especially to break through a dry spell or an income dip, then reach out to me at Tiffany G Studios, all one word, no spaces, on Instagram. Okay, book in a free business audit. We can see where you're at, what you're struggling with right now, and what your goals are, and then we can talk about how we can work together to bridge that gap. And we can look at the marketing side. I have 10 years experience in online marketing, so I can definitely help you on the marketing side. And then for the last couple of years, I've been learning more and more about mindset. In fact, actually my own experiences with mindset and learning more about managing the mind, I've been doing that for well more than a decade as well, actually, if you think about it, just because I used to struggle with anxiety. So then I had to learn about managing the brain. And then obviously as I went into business development and things like that, there was so much more to it that I didn't even know about, that I've always been working on, right? So, and yeah, just know that that is an option. If you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh wow, this could be really good to get somebody's eyeballs on this, you can book in that free business audit so that you can come away with a plan moving forward. And optionally you can decide to work with me from there, or you can just have a plan of, oh hey, here's what I need to do. So let me tell you about M. Okay, I know I've given you the highlights, but I just want to talk a little bit about what she was actually struggling with before she worked with me, and like kind of why she booked a call. And these are very common things, right? She was either all in or all out of her business. Okay, she would have family things come up and her business stuff would just get dropped, and it would be a case of like either the family stuff, she was all in on that because that was the highest priority, and business would get dropped. Or she then, after dropping it for a while, she'd go all in on business, and then she didn't have the time for family and things like that. There was no middle ground. There was no middle way forward. And finding that balance is absolutely essential. And it's different for all of us, what that balance looks like. And we get to choose that balance for ourselves. She wanted to go live or do live training so she could run a group program. That was her big dream. And she also wanted to work from anywhere and was planning that for the next 12 months. So she wasn't posting consistently, and she hadn't really posted much in the last couple of months, although she'd been quite active online in the months before that. This particular client of mine, she has amazing skills actually at just really building rapport and talking with people and things like that. Even I'm taking notes. So one thing I love about working with my clients is like I actually get really inspired by them. They inspire me as much as I believe I inspire them. She was so scared about going live and doing live training because she was worried about tripping on her words and saying the wrong thing, not being able to answer questions if they came up, not being able to edit or remove things and then publish them, right? So she was quite okay with pre-recorded videos, and she could go through it and check and then edit things if she needed to and put them out there. But the live thing just really stressed her out. And even the idea of a live Q&A really stressed her out as well, because not knowing what could come up. And this is so common. Like the thing that I forget about is like I've been teaching in live situations for 20 on and off for 20 years. And I had forgotten what it was like to have strategies for those kinds of things. So yeah, I'll be talking a bit more about some of that stuff that we're going through. But it's really fascinating because, you know, like when you get on camera, like that brings out that panic, fight or flight response for so many of us. And, you know, your mind goes blank. And that is completely normal. And it is normal to find your way through that and what works for you and what doesn't work for you and that kind of thing, so that you can show up and sit in front of this piece of plastic and not feel like some sort of saber-toothed tiger is going to jump out at you. But the brain wants to keep you safe. And anyway, I'll talk more about that later. I'm jumping ahead. After my first session, not our free session, but I think after our first paid session, okay, then she started posting consistently, and she filmed her first reel out in the wild while on the road, which is kind of amazing. I haven't filmed anything out on the road or out in the real world outside of my cushy little office things where I can control the noise and the wind and all that kind of stuff, because there is none. That was just really amazing to see that shift happen after the very first session. Okay. And in the first 30 days, we were working on her ability to balance her family and business. And for those of you who feel like you are, you know, working all the hours, but the income isn't there, and you don't have time for the relationships and other things that you want, this could be the section to perk up and listen to, okay? Because this is what I'm going to be talking about the next little bit. It's a really essential skill to really understand and find your way through, so that you have a middle ground and you're not beating yourself up and feeling guilty all the time. Because when you're beating yourself up and you're feeling guilty, it's like, oh, I didn't get this done, and oh, you know, I wasn't there for the kids, or I wasn't there for my family, and you know, while you're with your family, you're thinking about the work you should be doing, and while you're with your, you know, doing the work, you're thinking about the time you should be spending with your family. This used to drive me nuts. Took me years to work through this. Right? Wouldn't have if I'd have hired a coach at that time. But yeah, anyway, we all have to go our slow ways sometimes. It's really hard to take action when you're feeling from that place. It's hard to show up as a leader, as a confident coach, that people can see that you know your stuff and that you can help them. They can see your passion, right? Because you've got all this other mind drama in your head, and it can be holding you back from just showing up with enthusiasm, and, you know, your eyes light up, and just these little things that go into making a connection with others. Like, not even talking about selling to others, it's making that connection first, and then being able to like build on that relationship, and then that can turn into working together. Because like when it comes to coaching, like we're not selling a toaster online. Coaching, it's a very personal thing, right? They have to really know you, they have to really like you. I know that sounds like marketing, no, like and trust, but part of what gets someone to invest in coaching with you is that there is this psychological side of they want to be you. And if you're showing up with all of this mind drama, you're not going to be someone that they want to be. They want the success that you have had. They want to be able to show up like you do. And yeah, you need to work on that stuff first, right? So with my client, we flipped the script from her being like a victim of everyone else's wants to her being in control and making choices that suited her. And I just want to point out here, like, we didn't particularly sit down and go, okay, these are going to be your working hours, and anything like that comes up, then you're going to say no and things like that. My client did have an idea of like her boundaries for working and things like that. But what we really looked at was just instead of, I didn't get to that because this family thing came up, and then, I just couldn't get to it, and I just have to get it done, and some of that sort of stuff. We all kind of think and say to each other when we're going through this. It was like, okay, it's not that you didn't get to it. It's just that you prioritized family, because family is a big, like, it's a value for you. It's a core value. And you wouldn't be you if you weren't prioritizing family. So it's now, okay, I've prioritized family. Now let's look at, all right, what are my backup options for getting these things done? What's my backup time? And being able to make those choices from a place of confidence and certainty and not feeling like the victim. Okay. My own example of this, right, is for decades, anytime someone asked me for anything, I would drop everything that I was doing for them. Okay, all of my needs and priorities came last, with the exception of probably my day job, because they pay me money and there's an expectation there. But anything outside of that was fair game, right? And it came with this thinking of, I'm worthy if I'm doing things for others. That's when I'm valuable. That's how they'll know that I care. That's why they'll like me. They'll love me. They'll care for me, because I'm showing that I care for them. But I also felt really out of control through this time in my life. And it's kind of a majority of my life, because these were skills that I picked up in childhood that kept me safe, and I kept doing them into adult times, into my adult years. There we go. That's a nice way of saying it. So I was always in this state of, I was unable to get everything done. My own priorities were last. I'd be thinking things like, if I just had more hours in a day, right? If I just had more time. And I'd be feeling sad, ashamed that I wasn't good enough like everyone else, right? Because from my perspective, it just looked like everybody else could just get all their stuff done. And me, I just was always like, like the duck paddling on the pond. And it's like, maybe on the outside, people would see me as in control, but underneath I was paddling, trying to keep up with everyone else, or what I thought everyone else was doing. And yeah, it's just really hard, again, to show up, take action, be a confident leader, when underneath it, I was feeling sad and, ashamed. And then I was trying to avoid that sadness and that shame. And usually with all of this work, right, it was just like, if I can just work harder, if I can just work more, then I'll be good enough, then they'll like me. Not that I thought about it that way. It's just like, I just had to work harder, like, to get to my goals and to be good enough. I think that was kind of how I thought about it. It's only now, as I pull it apart so that I can talk to you guys about this, that I really can show you this cycle that I was in, right? And when you're trying to avoid the sadness and the shame, and with all the work, and I was doing all the busy work, right? There was no discernment between, hey, this is a needle mover and it needs focus, unless somebody had asked me to do it for them. So all my client work, that was always done because somebody else had that expectation of me. But the stuff that I needed to do for me, the important tasks, I mean, people would talk about doing, do the important things first. And my brain didn't work like that at that time. And something, I'm going off script again, but something that took me years to work out, especially because people are always like saying, do the important stuff, the stuff that takes the energy, do that at a time, in the morning. And, because that's your freshest time. But for me, it's not. For me, doing that important stuff, my best time is in the afternoon. And I know it's really strange, like doing writing and creative tasks and things, that's the afternoon hours are my best time. And in fact, like meetings and things like that sort of happen more in the mornings for me. And that works well for me. And like not learning that kind of thing and how my energy works and how my creativity comes out and my focus comes out and things like that. Like if I try and do that stuff in the morning time, I'm too in this analytical mode and pulling it apart. Whereas if I'm writing content in the afternoon, it just flows and I just write. And yeah, they say write drunk, edit sober. But for me, it's like I'm writing from this sort of more tired creative place. And then I get to edit it the next morning. And like when you don't know that about yourself, it's easy to tell yourself this story about you're lazy because you can't do it at the same time as everyone else. So I had to learn the skills of setting my working hours, understanding my energy levels, like I told you about creating content and focus work, not over planning and overworking, saying no. Oh my God, one of the hardest skills I've ever had to learn. Making choices about my priorities. If I wanted to say yes, it was because I chose to say yes and rearrange my schedule as it suited me. I had to understand my priorities and be happy with those choices. And I had to understand things like, hey, my husband is sick. I'm prioritizing going to the pharmacy for him instead of working on content because my family is a priority, and being able to work from that side of things from a place of strength, from a place of confidence, from a place of power, from a place of certainty, so that then I could, grow into the confident coach that you see now. Through this process of going into work-life balance stuff, we found ways that my client was stripping her own self-confidence without realizing. An example from my own experience here is like the way you talk to yourself. Things like, for me, it was always, I'm lazy. I'm a procrastinator. If only I wasn't like this, I could get more done. Why can't I just get it done already? I've been slack today. I didn't get anything done today. And, I have to get my together. I have to just get it together, Tiff, right? Like I used to say this stuff to myself, right? And like I was telling you before, when you think these thoughts, then you have these feelings, and I was feeling terrible. And when I felt terrible, I wouldn't take actions that would help me. I would take actions like watching Netflix, watching YouTube, jumping around different tasks, research, procrastinating, right? I'll just get on a new course, that'll fix it. And obviously I wasn't taking the actions that I needed to, and then I wouldn't get the results. So when you're thinking like this, like it's so hard to post, to go live, to take those big actions, right? Definitely launching a podcast, definitely not on my list of things I could have done because of just how could I get all the things done, right? If you're listening to this and you want an insight into how I like plan out my weeks and things like that, just let me know, because that's a real system I had to sort of get my head around. So as I said, when you're thinking these thoughts and you say these things to yourself, like I didn't think too much about it because I was raised in a family like that. I had family members who told me that I was lazy, and if you just got your act together you could really make something of yourself and things like that. What they didn't realize, what none of us really realized, was the reason that I was procrastinating was because of fear of either not being good enough or fear of not being able to handle success, like being able to handle that next level. And what's really interesting is it becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy, because I was telling myself that I'm lazy, unmotivated, and that I would never succeed because I'm lazy. And then in your brain, you have this reticular activating system, and it will prove that with evidence, okay? It will find the evidence. The reticular activating system is what sorts all of the messages, and it decides, like you decide what to focus on. Like if you're thinking about buying a new car and you looked at a red car that you liked, you'll then start seeing red cars everywhere. Okay, that's one example. And the same as like if you're thinking about getting a new haircut, you'll start really noticing people's haircuts, and especially ones you like, and the brain will help you find those with that reticular activating system. And you can actually hack that so that you can sort of, like, if you're telling it I'm lazy, it will find you the evidence that you're lazy. But of course you can also hack it in the other way of go, actually, I'm not lazy. I am good at this stuff, and hey, you can find the evidence for where you're improving, that 1% improvement. I didn't know all this stuff at that time. I just was stuck in this whole I'm lazy. And whenever I succeeded, whenever I broke through the laziness, got something done, usually at the last minute, it was stressful. And I definitely linked work with a lot of stress because I was doing it at the last minute. And if I was successful, then I was lucky despite being lazy. And if I like, this is the words and the way I would talk to myself and the way I viewed it. And if I failed, that was because of my laziness. Oh, well, I was lazy, and if I'd have just started earlier, and that was part of that cycle that I was in. So it didn't matter whether I was succeeding or I was failing, I would still feel bad because it's like, hey, you're successful, but it was just lucky. You didn't really do that. You just got lucky. And so then I would feel bad. And then I would feel shame because I wasn't, like, I was lazy and stuff like that, right? These are the things I used to tell myself. And then obviously if you fail, then you can link it to feeling bad and feeling shame. And then once you get those feelings caught up with whatever the result is of whether you're successful or failing, you get those feelings caught up, and then like your brain doesn't want to feel those negative feelings. So then you keep worrying about doing the tasks, and then you put them off and you procrastinate, which will be more evidence to your brain that you're lazy, right? And you're not, by the way. Okay, you're not. I wasn't. I just didn't really understand how the brain worked, how I worked. I didn't understand all the things that I know now. And yeah, I was just avoiding those feelings. And then yeah, I wouldn't want to take the actions because I was trying to avoid those. And then that meant that I was procrastinating, right? And then if I managed to fight through the discomfort, it's like walking through mud or sludge. And like that's a lot of what I help people with when it comes to bravery. It's like how to break things down so it doesn't feel like fighting through mud and sludge. It's like how to train your brain and give it evidence that you can do this and do the small steps and build up from there, right? When you do take action, you're fighting through the mud or the sludge, right? And it feels uncomfortable, then, your performance isn't always great, which then creates less results. And then, yeah, it just becomes this ongoing cycle. And then that's where we want to rewire the brain, give it different evidence, find other stories that can be true. And then over time, we can prove them true. We can look at the 1% improvement. Now, back to my client M. We looked at other areas that this thinking was affecting her and her business. So we looked at her struggles with emails and doing reels and things like that. And then she had a breakthrough, okay? She posted an amazing reel with full-on energy. I mean, I saw this reel and I thought, I want to hire you myself, right? It was just, she came out, she was confident, she was, here I am, and there was even, noise in the background, and she was still doing it and everything. And she had people reach out to her based on this reel. It was, hey, for those of you who don't know me yet, I'm just introducing myself. I'm a mom, I'm a CFO, I'm a this, I'm a that, and here's what I help you with. And, if this is what you want help with, contact me. And it was just like, she just really stepped into this power and leadership and confidence and certainty. And yeah, it was amazing. And then within 48 hours, she had 2 people reach out to book in discovery calls. Within a week, she had signed her first client, which was amazing because we had to work through a lot of her issues with sales and sales calls and sales feeling icky. I'm going to talk about that in a moment. And yeah, she just signed the second client yesterday, I found out. So, I mean, I think when I started this, I might have said in the intro that we were looking at signing within the week. While I've been recording this, I took a little overnight break because I had to do calls and things. And I found out yesterday she signed that new client, which is awesome. So she's gotten 2 clients in the time that we've been working together and broken through that dry spell, that income dip, right? And now she knows that she can make this work. And we're even starting to look at planning out like a small group program, online course type thing that might become a self-study course, that kind of thing. So yeah, we're just like, all of these things that she thought she was going to be working on through this year, we're already, we're 2 months in and we're already looking at that, if that makes sense, right? But to get there, we had to work on her feelings about sales because in her words, sales feel icky. Marketing feels icky. I don't want it to be icky. I don't want to be icky. And this is so common, okay? We have all had bad sales experiences as customers, and our brain is programmed to remember them. We've all had bad sales experiences as customers, right? Our brain is programmed to remember them because we felt bad through that situation, and we want to avoid those negative feelings. We also want to avoid, perhaps if we were in a situation where maybe we bought something where we hadn't intended to, and then afterwards we think about it and we go, oh, I bought that thing and I wish I hadn't, because we didn't tap into our true self and what we truly wanted in that moment, right? And then, so then we can link in that kind of thing of, oh, I don't want to feel that way and I don't want people to sell to me. And then we can also link that with how we want to show up. Like, we don't want to be that person that we didn't like, right? The thing is that actually, I heard this recently, actually, I'm going to incorporate this in, but there's people and then there's sales. Sales is a tool that is used by people, and the people can be good or bad and can try and use it in certain ways, but ultimately just sales is just a tool, okay? But we often put the two together. What I find really interesting is that actually there are times in our lives where we have bought something and it has been an amazing experience, like a big purchase. Maybe it could be your house, maybe it could be a big piece of furniture, something where you invested money that's sort of similar to coaching money. You might have even invested in some sort of online course or coaching, right? And the experience was overall a good one, okay? So like what we actually did was we kind of worked through this whole process where we actually, you know, I said, tell me about a time where buying something big was a pleasurable experience for you. And she wanted to tell me, I don't know, okay, it started when we went to this other store and the guy was horrible and this and that. And I said, no, look, I know you want to tell me all the bad stuff. Let's just go through this experience. And we went through this thing and we gave her brain evidence that actually sales can be good. And we like picked it apart and analyzed it and everything, and, you know, saw that actually this person was helping her, and they ended up spending more money because the person was helpful and helping solve a problem. They were buying a mattress, something that I've got to do soon. This is just what I find fascinating. It's where so many people get caught, right? They think that they have to be a different person to make sales. Oh, you know, I gotta be the salesperson. Like, I don't want to be the icky salesperson, but I still gotta make sales. And I gotta be somebody better, somebody more confident. But actually, we're helping someone solve a problem. The best salespeople in the world are good listeners, right? They listen and they respond, and then they say, hey, here's a solution for you. And then here's why that's worth investing in. And this is what we're doing with our coaching. So when you're on a sales call, you are going through a process to help someone come to a decision, even if it's not working with you or with me, if I'm the one running the call, right? We're helping someone come to a decision. And it's kind of the same if somebody's going in and buying a mattress or something. It's like, you know, you just be helping them find the right mattress. And it could be in this store, it could be somewhere else. Sure, we're hoping it might be here, but this is what we're doing. We're helping someone solve a problem. And if you're listening to this and thinking about sales calls and things, check out my last episode if you haven't already. It has my 5-minute process for just calming the nerves, overcoming those negative thoughts, and getting into a space of confidence and certainty before getting on a sales call. It does have a 15-minute intro for it because I wanted to give context and how to use it and some stories and things like that. But ultimately, there's the 5-minute process that I go through. It's sort of like part meditation, part visualization, part affirmations, and you can take it and listen to it and maybe make your own, work out what works for you, that kind of stuff, and tailor it to you. So yeah, it was interesting. We worked through this in a session. And then, yeah, the very next week, she told me, oh, look, I started telling people about my 30-day coaching offer. And, you know, I didn't feel icky while doing it. And I was like, oh, man, that is awesome. Like, that is music to my ears. Like, if you are in a dry spell when it comes to, you know, getting clients and that kind of thing, the couple of biggest reasons for a dry spell, it usually has something to do with your feeling about sales and marketing, or it can have something to do with your feeling about getting your clients results. It's usually one of those two things. And just talking as someone who's felt it on both of those things at different times, especially if you have a stumble or a situation with a client, maybe you work with a client who's not quite ideally matched for you and your personality and your process, and they don't get the results, and then you can turn around going, oh man, they didn't get the results, it's all me, I should be a better coach, they would have got results. You can end up in these sorts of thought spirals, right?
back to my client. In the last couple of weeks, like we worked actually just to finish that off, we worked through her issues with sales, and now we've got her, she's landed 2 clients on sales calls, which has been amazing. She signed them. I shouldn't use the word landed. She signed them. It's awesome. And now she knows that she can get this working. So other things that we've been working on now is in the last couple of weeks, we've been working on her ability to go live and do live training. This is an interesting area to develop because being on camera can trigger that fight or flight response. It taps into trauma from childhood you might not even remember. And it's just fascinating because it's this little plastic device, but our brain sees it and it just triggers that fight or flight, and it reacts as if a saber-toothed tiger is going to jump out from behind the lens. In some ways, I find it completely fascinating how the brain does that, okay? It's trying to keep you safe. You're putting yourself on camera, you're putting yourself out into the world. It can potentially be judged. You could potentially be judged as not being worthy or not being good enough. And our old, in caveman times, like you didn't want to be kicked out of the community. You didn't want to be kicked out of the group because that would mean most likely certain death. And so this is how our brain processes this kind of thing. Like we want to fit in, and it's just fascinating how like things we have to do as an entrepreneur, we've got to do things to be a leader and not fit in, and yet our brain really wants us to just follow and fit in. And yeah, I find that fascinating. For all of us, we have to come to some kind of process that works for us so that we can be comfortable on camera, so that we can look at this little piece of plastic with the glass in it and see our ideal clients rather than potential judgment, see us helping people rather than all the nerves and things like that. And this does get easier with practice and giving your brain evidence of you doing this in little steps, okay? And it also helps with working through some of the mindset side of things and potentially looking at some things like where all of this comes from and that kind of thing. And I just want to say, like, one of my pivots was in video coaching, helping people get on video. I actually wanted to help introverts get on video. So it's kind of funky that I now have a client who's like, help me with video. But because the introverts, they did not want this. I was trying to do this in 2017 before it was cool. And yeah, the introverts didn't want it. But I also recognized how it really taps into some like trauma that's caused in the early childhood years. So I don't go into that as much. I just, give people the practical steps to work through, and then also understanding the mindset and what we can pull apart. But I don't try and go in and heal trauma that was caused in childhood because I'm not trained for that. I'm very conscious of that kind of thing, although I will let someone know that, hey, this can have something done in childhood. Here's a couple of things you could work through if you want to, but I'm just very cautious about that. With this client of mine, we worked through this process that I shared all of my knowledge because it might be hard to believe, but for me, public speaking, getting on camera, I used to stutter and stammer. I'd feel so uncomfortable. I remember I had to do a presentation at university, my undergrad university, more than 20 years ago, and I was doing marketing. And as one of my majors in marketing it was just group project presentation. I remember my first one, and I'm so stubborn that it's like I won't admit that I can't do something. So I'll get up, even though I don't like getting up. Everybody was doing a piece of the talk, and so I got up and I was like, okay, yep, I'll do the talk. And also the people pleaser in me didn't want to say no, I'm not good at talking. I didn't want to admit that I wasn't good at talking. So I got up and I stuttered and stammered, and everyone in my group, they were looking at me, and you could see how uncomfortable they were. And yeah, wasn't a fun experience. And I, of course, being the stubborn person that I am, it's like, well, I'm going to get over this. I'm going to work on it. And, eventually came back around to work on that and build the skills that I have now. All I wanted to do was hide and not be seen. And yeah, I still struggle with this to a small degree. I'm still coming up with metaphors, stretching my wings, getting comfortable, because for me, it's a lot easier to sort of be yourself once I get to know people, and then putting yourself online and things like that. For me, I find that hard. Like, I didn't grow up with social media. Social media wasn't invented. The internet wasn't invented. It was barely invented when I was finishing high school and going into university, right? in the late 90s. We worked through these skills that I had to build, and this is what my client has built. She's been doing it. She did the small practice steps that I gave her, right? Doing tiny steps each day. And then I found out yesterday that she recorded her first live. Was it the day before yesterday? Anyway, so she's done it. It was in her Facebook group, granted, but I mean, yeah, she's done it. She's broken through that barrier. So now it's really fascinating. Now we're like planning out her next program and all of these things. Is now, oh, here's the possibilities. Like, this is what I love about helping people to be brave. And I know that I've talked about bravery in a lot of different senses, even in this podcast, helping people with sales calls, with their sales, breaking through that client drought. The marketing is a tool to help things, the mindset is a tool, but the skills of bravery and having somebody there to help you be brave and take the next step and that kind of thing, like it's just amazing to see this client of mine, client M, her progress. And yeah, now we're just planning out the next things, and it's like we're doing the next things together, and like, oh man, it lights me up. Right? to be a part of that. Okay. Now she knows she has an amazing offer, a solution to her clients' problems that they're willing to pay for. And what's really interesting, like, she helps people with productivity and planning and then automating things and saving time and stuff like that. It's just interesting because her clients they really need her. They get on those sales calls and they're just like, they've already they want a solution. They're ready to hand over their money. Her content is on point. She's posting consistently. She has a balance with work and life. She just did a trip and she worked on the road. Like, this is things she thought she was going to be working on throughout this 12 months. And we're in 2 months. We're going into month 3. And, she's been doing the work on her mind, the negative thoughts, the fears. She's been taking those small steps and building that confidence and certainty every day. Her dream of a group program, it's closer than ever before. Like I said, we're planning out like a small short course, which I think she's going to deliver as like in this group situation. So she's going to be trying it out in this small way. Like, it's not the big group program she had imagined, especially because like we were talking and I was like, okay, look, I know you want to do the big group program, but look, it's just a lot easier if we focus on one thing, giving them one thing in a small course, let people build up those skills, right? It's been fascinating. Like, we all do this as coaches. It's like, we know all of the stuff and we want to just give it to our people as quickly as possible, but it can be overwhelming. Like, that's one of the things that I'm often trying to do. It's just like, hey, let's just simplify. Let's just break this down. Remember, your people don't have your skills. Right? And like I do with a lot of my clients, I'm also kind of their ideal client at the same time as being coach, or very similar to. And there's like, I remember how I had to learn the skills of planning. It didn't come naturally and I had to find my own way with it, that kind of thing. And yeah, just remembering all of that overwhelm and all that. So yeah, anyway, I'm really excited to be a part of that transformation. I love helping business owners do brave things, busting through dry spells and income dips. It's fascinating how the skills of bravery, you need them at every level of business. Okay. It's not like, oh, I was brave, I've done the live, I was brave, and now I don't need to be brave again. Or, bravery might not look exactly the same the next time you go to use it, but it just does come around again. Okay, because you do need to be brave again and again, and that can vary in terms of how that looks and how hard that is to take action. But yeah, it's never a case of I've got bravery mastered, I never need to worry about that, because there's always going to be something that's going to trigger in the mind, that fight or flight, the fear, that kind of thing. Assuming you're a normal person who feels these things, right? And especially if you're a person who's maybe prone to anxiety like myself, it's an even more essential skill to have the skills of bravery. You'll always need some sort of tools that you employ. Support can always be good. And yeah, like I love this story of this particular client, how we started out with work-life balance and then, moving through these things, sales and getting clients, and now it's like, cool, now we're into the launching thing. Because I mean, like, that's what I've been doing for the longest time, is helping people launch, but I wanted to have something for people who aren't there yet. And the skills of bravery can just be applied throughout. So if you are listening to this and you're dreaming of that next brave step, or you want help busting through a dry spell or income dip, if you're dealing with inconsistency, work-life balance, want sales calls to flow easier and end in more yeses than nos, then it's time to book in a free business audit call with me, okay? Get in touch with me on Instagram at Tiffany G Studios, all one word, no spaces, no capitals, right? And book in that call, right? We will sit down for an hour. We can see where you're at. We can see what you're struggling with and what your goals are. And then like how coaching with me can help you fill that gap. Right? And how we can do that faster than trying to piece it all together on your own. And we covered my client, and we covered her issues in a few weeks. She thought she'd be working on this all year. Now, a little bit more background about me, okay? I've been in online marketing for 10 years. I've been coaching and consulting since 2017, and I've helped over 100 clients around the world in that time. Clients like Tracy and Jess, who I helped them to launch their first group program and help them to get their first clients, and they doubled their investment in me and they made thousands, and then they created something that they could repeat and keep getting clients with. Okay, my clients make thousands, especially the ones who invest in me for one-on-one coaching. Okay, another client, Paula, she made $2,000 in the first 30 days. We were looking at her strategy, we were going through her sales page and making tweaks and adding in bonuses and the strategy and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I was really happy to be a part of that. Another client of mine who she went from zero, having no business, to having a business, having a brand, having her first 100 people on an email list, and finding out more about them so that she could solve their problems and help them with what they were going through. My own results was my own 5-figure launch, where I ran a launch and then I was fully booked for 6 months. And some of those clients I still work with 3 years later. That was a mixture of services work and doing like consulting coaching. So yeah, I'm always sort of taking on that kind of mix. Current client M, she's got her first 2 paying coaching clients within a few weeks of working together. And yeah, like she's, busting through her blocks with live video and teaching live. And now we're planning her next launch and like a course where we're going through the course thing and planning that out and then working backwards from there to do the launch. That is what I have been doing for a majority of the last few years, although also I have helped many people get their first clients as well. And it's all about helping people to be brave. So thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this. I hope this has helped. I hope that this has given you things to think about, especially around the mindset, how you are talking to yourself. And again, I would encourage you to reach out to me in the DMs on Instagram, chat with me, let me know how this has landed if you'd like. Also book in that business audit call so that we can go through those steps, like looking at what you're struggling with, what your goals are, and getting you a plan for how to bridge that gap. And then you could decide if you want to actually go through that plan with me by your side, cheering you on, helping you work through it, helping you with what words to write and all that kind of thing on the marketing side. Or you can always go on and go, okay, I've got the plan. Thanks, Tiff. I'll go and do it on my own. And, maybe it might take a little bit longer, but maybe that's like the right decision for you.
Thanks for listening to the Business Bravery podcast. Has this episode inspired you to do something brave? Even if it's only send a difficult email, please share it with me on Instagram or other social media channels. Feel free to tag me at Tiffany G Studios. That's TIFFANY. G for golf, STUDIOS, no spaces, no underscores, etc. Or you can use the hashtag Business Bravery Podcast so that I can cheer you on, and together we can inspire other coaches and course creators to do brave things in their business and life. Now, I'm Tiffany, and I'll leave you with this one last thing. What's one brave thing you're going to do today? It doesn't have to be big. Even the smallest steps can create the most massive results. So again, feel free to share it with me either publicly or privately so that I can cheer you on. That's it from me. Until next time, bye for now.